Take two. Tax assessor had already been out this year, and I was able online to access his report. So I knew it had below average reports on 3 areas inside the mobile home: electrical, cabinetry, which means doors, windows, and yes, cabinets too. One other, but it escapes my memory because I dismissed it as a given to be expected item, and I wasn't too concerned with it. So after contacting the 70 beep, cut, edit, user error. So after contacting the 77-year-old owner and her son and making arrangements for them to be on the property, both that evening and the next full day they would be out there personally removing personal property. So they were personable, kind, and accommodating. She even offered to drive the distance to come and get me so that I could find the property. Let me say here that it's a trick bag I would never get into, but also I would never impose on anyone in such an extreme situation. So we worked out an agreement that I could arrive at any time, and if they were not there, I was told to access the property and I had full permission to explore it and inspect it. After I got off the phone with them, I sat trying to think about how to verify that I would not get into some financial peril that I just fully knew nothing about. I already knew I wanted this property. I needed to see it and learn more about the property's legal aspects and details to confirm that. Since I had already looked up the property's legal information on the county GIS lookup, I knew the woman was listed as a secondary owner and the son was not shown at all. A main owner was listed who had not been mentioned to me. I suspected the property was in probate or had been so recently. So I called this lawyer who during the past summer and spring I had contacted, and he happened to be a probate and estate planning attorney. So initially in the spring it was for free legal advice. In the summer I employed him for some legal services. So he told me he could not do these for me because the property was so far away. Together we determined the county. He gave me 2 names for 2 real estate lawyers who specifically dealt with a legal procedure called title insurance, which he explained to me was checking on a good title going back. This would be done primarily through the registrar's office of the county. Basically, an attorney checks to determine there are no liens against the title, that it is free and clear, that there are no judgments filed against them, that no local government filings, of which there can be many types, such as condemned building structure that requires immediate demolition, or even possible hazardous waste such as asbestos or lead paint that could force a sale due to cleanup costs out of this world. These types of things can result in a foreclosure proceeding to be pending or looming soon on the horizon. In my personal experience, I've seen a city-county attempt to sell by force a family's country property because the owner had hoarded an extremely large amount of equipment, scrap metals, etc. The local government wished to sell the property to pay for the removal costs. In desperation, the owner's family secured the services of both a demolition and dumpster company. Let me tell you, I've found several coffin-sized wooden boxes in the woods and brush. I spent hours cutting brush to even get into their location. You would never believe what I found inside those. They were plumb full of aluminum aircraft wheel rims. Also on the property was one aluminum streetlight pole. Our company had to come out and cut it in 3 pieces to transport it. This was an old man and old woman with only an old brown 4-door Chevy vehicle, but also off in the woods and brush sat a dinosaur, an old non-working piece of equipment that actually did run, and they likely stole that light pole with it one night from when an on-ramp had been installed at some time in the past not too far away for a freeway. That couple was amazing. What all they had done. That hoarded stuff was that old man's fortune. His retirement nest egg. So anyways, I digressed, but I also gave a good example of property judgments that might not be apparent to someone buying a property. By this time, I had only slept 6.5 hours the night before and really hadn't eaten much, but I pushed onwards to handwriting out 1.5 pages of driving directions, mostly freeway changes or merges. Then I went to bed exhausted. I was awake 3.5 hours later by crippling intense heat making me heat stroke sick. So instead of jumping in the tub and trying to sit in air conditioning with the fan on, because the air and fan were already on, I immediately began packing for a road trip to get out of there before I became so ill that I couldn't. It was obvious I would never be able to sleep. I've had a bad neighbor downstairs who does this to me. I don't know why. It just floats her boat to be evil. Some people are just wired that way. So I picked a change of clothes, a blanket, a pillow, a small couch pillow, map, my map instructions, various property, lawyer contact information, and of course video camera and their equipment. Off 1 a.m. off I went. Stopped to make sure the windows were properly cleaned on the truck. This paid off as a couple of hours of highway driving had such thick fog I often could not see more than 1 to 2 vehicle lengths in front of me. Nice thing about night travel like that, I mostly was the only vehicle the entire trip. It was a total pleasure, mainly due to not being forced to high speeds on unfamiliar curvy roads, highways, by heavily congested traffic. This is the second long property trip I've driven by this method, and I do really love it. When I finally do move, this is how I hope to do it. And we're going to have to cut. And the reason I talk so fast most of the time is that I've been invaded by like 3 carloads of people on a trail that is like virtually never used. Ever, ever, ever. And I hadn't even been out here in like 8 years, but it was never used then either. So, what it boils down to is that eventually I got these people to talking, and it seems they didn't want to go see the estate lawyer the next day. They were concerned about emptying their belongings out because they had been in a bankruptcy, and they were switching it from a Title 13 bankruptcy to a Title 7 bankruptcy. And suddenly, you know, when I explained that we'd all have to be there or I couldn't research the title, because I'm sure they would need her permission to research her financial background, but I don't think actually that it did require that. But she started stuttering, saying that she couldn't sign anything, and I'm telling her son, well, if she can't sign anything, this means that, one, she doesn't own the property and she cannot sell it. There's no way she can sell this property. I told him I was going to go on home and that they needed to do some more research, and I would do some more research also the next day, and we'll just be in touch with each other. I said if everything was clean and right, I was ready to buy the property right now. As far as I was concerned, it could be done now. The only thing we needed was for this title to come back free and clear, going way back, so that I could prove that I would not be saddled with their debts. They're like, oh, you can't be saddled with our debts? Yeah, well, without ever looking it up, I knew that you could. You sure can, because the liens are against the property. The property is security, so even if they sell you the property is still security for those debts. You would still be, even after paying them, responsible to pay those debts. Otherwise, they just still foreclose the property and you still lose it, and now you owe their debts. So, I wasn't going in for that trick bag. So, I was a little bit upset by that point. I mean, I was kind of mad because, you know, I spent my money coming up there, and that's something that they should have known. If they can't sign a piece of paper, they know they can't sell it. They should have disclosed that in the first place. And I would still go ahead and buy it from the trustee. The trustee will be appointed in like 2 weeks, and even if the trustee approved the sale, the judge, federal judge, has to also approve the sale. He has the final approval. But there's no telling what leftover debt, because it doesn't guarantee it's still free and clear of debt. there can be leftover debt that I would still be responsible for, become responsible for. And if those people got out of debt themselves, they have a certain amount of time legally to buy their own property back from you. So you could be living on this property and made hundreds of dollars worth of improvements, or thousands of dollars, or certainly not hundreds of thousands, because I'm pretty sure you and I, none of us can afford to do that. But they wouldn't have to pay you extra for that. Not as far as I know. They just have to buy their property back. And you'd have to give it up. You would have no choice but to sell it back, because that's the law. So obviously to me that property is like a done deal. It's gone. It's water under the bridge. But I'm really thankful that I spent the last 3 years familiarizing myself with various details of real estate law and ways I could get taken advantage of, or end up not owning anything and out all my money with no legal recourse at all. So I thought I would pass that along to you all on just the various ways that I was able to check on things, and the various ways that by getting them to talk, they began to tell the real story. And see, because if I would have paid for one of those in-detailed title search, you realize that could have cost me several $1,000s. I could have paid out $5,000 to find out what I found out, just by getting them to jaw around, just to talk with me, because most people will tell on themselves in the first 5 minutes. And I want to thank you for your time. I hope you'll come back and watch more videos with me. And I probably got to get out of here because I'm sort of blocking this trail, and I really didn't mean to do that. Alright, bye-bye. This is Anna's Homestead.